The sky over Old Dock 12 tore open like an old argument, sticky with smoke, ragged with ash. And something that had once been a sun winked through the ruin. Cole Payne ran toward that wink because there was nowhere else to run that didn't already belong to the dead. He should have known better than to let the girls sleep. 15 years of shooting, moving, surviving had taught him lots of small things. How long a wound would bleed, how to clear a room without announcing your intentions. When a convoy's silence meant an ambush. It had not taught him how to turn down the weight of a child pressing against his chest. The smallest of the three fit like a warm secret in his left arm. Green skin, pale hair almost white against the grime, dress torn at the hem. The other two clung to his right hand, fingers like shadows around his knuckles. At his heel, a miracle rendered in muscle and fang, ran something the children called Rax, and he called companion. A creature not quite dog, certainly not anything human. Rax moved with a watchfulness Cole's human partners would have envied. Behind them, the city hiccuped with violence. Footfalls hammered the cracked asphalt, a staccato of someone who meant to catch and punish. The pursuers were precise. No chaotic mob, no random looters. 3 of them, dark-armored, helmets polished to a rhetorical shine. Emblems on pauldron and helmet hinted at imperial intent, a crown crossed by a lightning rune. Royal Guard, not municipal knuckleheads. Cole's chest bumped with every run. The armor did its job, but it did nothing for the hollow in his ribs. He could feel the weight of his life in the cling of fabric and metal. He could hear the city alive with its usual indifference to any single body. Even now, somewhere beyond the smoke, vendors shouted over an auction. A preacher shouted the end of something. Seeds of rumor and fear blowing in the same wind that brought them death. The girls had sleep on their faces when he'd found them. Sleep like surrender. Cole had a rule about surrender. The rule said you only accept it if you have to. A shard of something buried in his shoulder armor bit into him. Adrenaline flared, sharper than pain, and he pushed open a half-collapsed service door, dragging the 3 inside. The space behind the door had once been a maintenance corridor. Now it smelled of oil and old promises. Pipes groaned in tired rhythm. Fluorescent lights blinked like uncomprehending insects. Cole forced himself to count heartbeats. Counting slowed panic. He laid the smallest on a leaning crate, then the others beside her. They fit together like borrowed gifts. Rax lowered his shoulder to widen a gap, protection that needed no explanation. The animal's chest rose in slow, dangerous breaths, nostrils quivering at sounds Cole could not yet hear, but that he expected with the certainty of a trained man. Then the 3 armored figures slammed through the door, the world refocusing into strobe flashes of metal and breath. "Hands where I can see them!" The captain spoke Viridian, clipped and ceremonial. The tone carried beyond translation, a demand flavored with authority. It was a phrase that had opened cells and closed lives. Cole didn't move fast. He didn't let his reflexes betray him. For 36 seconds, he made himself into a man whose training had no hesitation. "Drop it," the captain said, and his translator clipped the Viridian into Cole's ear. Cole lowered his eyes to the girls. The smallest kept her face turned away, a tight little knot of breath and hair. "They're children," Cole said, English no longer the default, but something he could work with. The captain's helmet cocked. "Royal blood does not render you exempt from arrest, human." Something cold in the back of Cole's skull told him that wasn't a question. I'm not here under false pretenses, he said. I found them. You found them within restricted territory. The Empress has exacted, the captain began. Finders aren't keepers, Cole said. It was a stupid thing to say. It was also the first raw thing he'd said in years. It landed without an echo. The captain stepped forward. Your identification. Cole's hand rested on his sidearm because that's what hands did when they made decisions. The weapon was a weight and a promise. He could have killed these men and bought minutes. The world would have closed for him in a neat, clean way, the kind soldiers were taught to make when they could not otherwise write their endings. He did not draw. Instead, someone else stepped up to speak. An older woman with a voice that had the kind of patience born of too much waiting. Her tunic bore a mark he recognized from the peace months. Human delegation. Elena. A breath seemed to fall in the room like a dam breaking. Elena, Cole said, and the name slid out of him. It tasted like smoke and something else he'd left behind before he learned to go without it. Her eyes were the first thing that had hardened since the attack. They moved over Cole and rested on the children. There was a quick assessment in the tilt of her head, the micro shift of her stance. Clinical, trained, human undeniably. Elena, the captain said, stiff as a solstice, you may not. She cut him off with a look so sharp it required no translator. Stand down. She spoke in their lingua franca, every syllable deliberate. We'll investigate. If they are who they claim to be, we'll proceed with protocol. She turned to Cole. And Captain Payne, step aside. Cole took one step. He wanted to stand his ground, to say no, to make the rules bend around the sagging truth of his arms. Instead, he stepped aside. He let them through. They measured the girls like fresh merchandise, fingers light as they brushed cheeks. Elena's hands were gentle. She checked pulse, smoothened hair, whispered something. Patience. Let me see. The kind of words that didn't belong in any translator manual because they were for people, not policies. The smallest woke. The human thing inside Cole, the stupid, soft part, waited to see if she would scream. She didn't. She put her hand on Elena's palm like a child accepting a stranger into the circle of what she had left. And you found them where? Elena asked, neutral, asking because answers mattered. Dock 12 service corridor, Cole said. Elena's eyebrows knit. She opened a small slate and tapped letters into it, a soft machine noise that translated to the room's buzzer eyes. Outside, voices rose, the city beginning to turn its face like an old animal waking to danger. What are their names? She asked. Talia, the tallest breathed. Mira, the middle one said. Lena, the smallest whispered, her voice a small bell. The names were like leaves in a storm, official, almost ceremonial. Elena checked each name like she might triangulate truth between syllables. Her hands paused at the last one, at Lena, and something like shadow passed across her face. She looked at Cole. They are the Empress's children, she said. Cole's chest went cold in a way that had nothing to do with armor. He had fought forces that wanted to strip planets clean of people. He had watched friends vanish. He had not expected royal kin to tuck themselves into the rubble of his world like a forgotten toy. Elena's hands didn't tremble. We must secure them, she continued. If true, if this is what it seems, the Empress's response will be immediate and brutal. We have to move them off site. The captain, finally, put down the pistol. By what authority? He began. By mine, Elena said, by the delegations, human oversight, and by the fact that blood will be spilled if we delay. Outside, that sound grew louder. The city's rumble became something like a problem muttering until speech. Cole could feel it in the lights that flickered. Elena looked at him as if making an unpopular decision required a face. Captain Payne, you will accompany us. He wanted to argue, wanted to refuse. In war, there were directions you learned to follow, and there were loyalties you learned to keep. He had no loyalty to a court, no patience for an empire. But Elena's face had the look of someone who'd seen far too many decisions made without regard for the small bodies that carried them. He followed. They moved through backways, hallways with pipes like veins, service lifts that burped forgotten air. Every corridor showed the signature of a city that had once been ordered and had decided, quietly, that chaos was cheaper. Cole kept a hand on the hilt of his weapon the entire way. Elena carried a small satchel with instruments and ration bars, and the girls clung to that human certainty like children to a parent. They slid into a maintenance shaft that led to the under-level air conduits. Someone had painted graffiti there, handmade slogans for the peace that didn't yet exist. People had pasted posters celebrating treaties that read like New Year's promises. The posters were torn in half. Someone had painted strike-throughs with care. They emerged into the market under Old Dock, called by locals the Hollow. It was a maze of stalls and whispering vendors selling things that needed to be sold in dead times. Fabrics, memories, the practicalities of survival. It teemed with faces wearing suspicion as if it were fashionable. Cole felt eyes. The world in the Hollow was a theater of contradictions. An old man selling crystallized fuel next to a young woman selling fresh fruit. A preacher selling penance to those who could still afford prayer. There were people who recognized power when the capsule opened and the Empress's crest mattered. There were people who envied the idea of authority because authority could be bribed. Empress Flora's image was omnipresent here, an unsettling presence. Billboards, dogmatic flyers, augmentations overlaying faces in augmented reality, shouting the slogans of a benevolent regime that was not, in practice, benevolent. Satire, Cole thought. The city's adverts had turned tragedy into theater. He did not laugh. Someone in the crowd spat at them when they passed. Another pulled a child close and mouthed a prayer. A vendor reached out with a cup of water. Another man tried to palm Elena's satchel. The Hollow did not care for heroes. It cared for what could keep it fed. Elena moved with an authority that was neither ceremonial nor military. She had the steady force of someone who had read the books on both. She negotiated passage with a smile that cost nothing and bought them a corridor by trading a favor and 2 ration bars. As dusk pooled in the corners of the Hollow, Cole finally let himself watch the children. Talia hummed a small song under her breath, a melody that sounded like a lullaby from a planet Cole had never seen. Mira leaned toward Rax and ran a small hand along its flank. Lena, asleep at last, clutched Elena's gloved finger like a lifeline. Cole thought of the people he had shot at, of the orders that had been given in his name and by his hands. He thought of the faces of men he once trusted. He thought of the neat lies that built nations. None of that helped him understand why the Empress's daughters were in his arms. Then, from somewhere up the Hollow's laddered levels, someone shouted a name that slid like a blade through the crowded murmurs. They have them! Royal children, the Empress's daughters have been found. The crowd's current changed with the shout. Heads turned, hands tightened on the edges of cloth. The hollow smelled suddenly of panic. Elena's face hardened. Her voice, when she said it, had no patience for performance. Move. They ran. Cole ran because there was no room in his body for anything else. Because he had swaddled and carried and done the unglamorous work of keeping small lives whole. Because Rax's teeth had bared when the first shout rose. And because he believed, deep and dangerous, that anyone who trusted him should be trusted back. As they cleared the market, a single figure uncoiled itself from the crowd, a man with a face that knew how to smile like currency. He sanded his grin over them and stepped forward as if he might offer a hand. "Captain Payne," he said, almost polite, "you have something that belongs to Her Majesty." Cole didn't lower his gaze. "You work for her?" The man's eyes flashed an animal's split second. "We all serve our betterment." He nodded to a shadow in the crowd. A signal. The shadow moved, a runner in too clean armor. Cole spotted the signal and felt a cold certainty settle into him like a splinter. The Hollow's gossip was a weapon, and it had just been fired. The runner dived. Rax leapt, a physical answer to a political problem, and the Hollow became a place of shouts and running and overturned carts. The man with the smile melted back into the crowd, pleased with how theater could be made of people. Cole sprinted. Elena called commands in clipped breaths, moving the girls like precious contraband. A dozen hands could have taken them. The wrong dozen hands would make them into symbols. Cole didn't want them turned into anything. They dove into a service elevator marked for demolition and hit the call. Numbers climbed. The elevator dropped with the groan of guilt. Cole stood with his back to the wall, chest heaving. The girls' small bodies pressed into him, Rax's heat against his calf. They had one corner of the Hollow behind them and a city that wanted to know what story it would tell about those 3 children in front of them. Talia's voice, small and steady as a hidden drum, found him in the elevator's dark. "They're not looking for us," she said. Cole's shoulder twitched. "Who are they looking for then?" he asked, because the question had been burning under his ribs since the first searchlight cut the wreck. Talia lifted those bright, unnatural eyes and said with a clarity far beyond her years, "They're looking for you." The elevator spat them into a corridor that smelled of metal fatigue and wet concrete. The lamps overhead buzzed in epileptic protest, sputtering half-light down on a floor cracked by neglect. Cole kept the girls close, Rax tighter, Elena closest of all, not because he trusted her, but because the alternatives were worse. The memory of Talia's voice, "They're looking for you," still rang like a bullet casing bouncing down iron stairs. He wanted to demand an explanation, to shake it out of her fragile bones. But he knew better. Children lied when they were afraid. Children told truths they didn't understand. And sometimes children spoke words someone else had planted inside them, like time bombs. "Where does this come out?" he asked Elena, keeping his tone level. She checked her slate. "Subsection 9. A service hatch that leads into the east tunnels." Cole grunted. "And from there?" "From there," Elena said, "we try to get above ground without being seen." Which, right now, is a fantasy. The elevator's doors shuddered open onto a market smaller than the Hollow, but sharper, hungrier. If the Hollow was a carnival of contradiction, subsection 9 was a knife. Everything here cut in some direction. Traders with too many pockets, smugglers with too few scruples, and eyes that had learned to measure strangers as quickly as prices. The crowd surged like a current the moment they stepped in. Cole had lived in cities long enough to know the scent of betrayal, sweat mixed with opportunity. Subsection 9 smelled of both. "Stay close," he muttered. The girls obeyed, one hand on his belt, another on his coat. Rax kept his head low, shoulders high, hackles twitching at invisible signals. "Cole." Elena's voice cut through the noise. "Left." They followed her lead through a narrow aisle where stalls leaned into each other like gossiping drunks. Wires hung overhead like vines. Someone sold counterfeit viridian metals. Another hawked prosthetic limbs, some still bloodied. Satirical graffiti mocked the Empress on one wall. A crown turned upside down, dripping like rot. The satire earned nervous laughs from passers-by, but no one dared linger too long near it. Mockery was currency, but denunciation was death. Halfway down the aisle, a man with a scar that split his lip leaned out of a doorway. His grin was the kind thieves wore when they smelled desperation. "Pain," he said, as if the name had been waiting on his tongue all day. Cole's stomach froze. He hadn't heard that name spoken in this pit of a district in years. "Don't," Elena hissed. The man ignored her. Captain Cole Payne, hero of Kestris. The ghost of the Seventh Heads turned. That was all it took. Whispers scuttled across the market like rats. The girls pressed tighter against him. Cole's hand hovered near his sidearm. "Not here." The man with the scar licked his lips. "No." But Her Majesty pays handsomely for ghosts, especially ones carrying her lost little heirs. The market went still in patches, like a battlefield when everyone suddenly realized where the sniper was hiding. Elena grabbed Cole's arm. "We need to move." The scarred man raised a hand. Shadows shifted behind him. Armed men, half a dozen at least, the kind who didn't wear uniforms because uniforms came with accountability. "Sell them to me," the man said. "I'll make it quick." "You won't have to watch." Cole didn't answer with words. He slammed his shoulder into the nearest stall, toppling crates of synthetic grain. The air filled with dust and curses. "Run!" Elena pulled the girls. Cole drew his weapon, firing 2 shots that cracked the ceiling and sent fragments raining down, not to kill, just to scatter. The crowd panicked, surging like a tide. In the chaos, Rax lunged, jaws flashing. One of the scarred man's shadows screamed as teeth sank into his thigh. They cut left, plunging into a passage choked with steam. Pipes hissed, valves leaked, and the floor was slick with condensation. Cole shoved Elena ahead, covering their flank with quick bursts of gunfire. The scarred man's voice echoed behind them. "Run, Payne. Run, but you can't outrun what you are." They burst into a chamber filled with rusted machinery, an old pump station, long abandoned. The roar of water below masked their gasps. Elena pushed the girls into a corner, checked them for injuries. Cole stood at the threshold, weapon raised, heart still hammering. "Who was that?" she demanded. "No one that matters." "Don't lie to me." Cole clenched his jaw. "A mistake I should have killed a long time ago." Elena's eyes burned. "And now that mistake knows you're carrying the Empress's daughters. You've just painted a target on all of us." He wanted to argue. Instead, he holstered his weapon and looked at the girls. 3 sets of eyes, wide and silent. They didn't understand the politics, the betrayals, the satire bleeding on walls. They only understood fear. And for the first time, Cole wondered if Talia had been right. Maybe they weren't looking for the girls. Maybe the Empress wanted him. Because in a world where symbols mattered more than lives, What better symbol than a soldier who had already survived too many wars? The water roared below, the walls dripped, and in the silence between heartbeats, Cole knew this wasn't just a rescue. It was the opening act of a hunt. The pump station stank of rust and stagnant water. The dripping pipes kept time like a metronome, hammering Cole's nerves into taut wire. Elena paced the edge of the chamber, her slate glowing dimly against her cheekbones. "We can't stay here," she said. "If that bastard calls the guard, this whole district will choke on soldiers within the hour." Cole crouched near the children, checking his rifle's charge. "He's not calling the guard." Elena shot him a look sharp enough to cut. "And how do you know that?" "Because scum like him doesn't share. He'll want the bounty for himself." Cole slapped the chamber closed, metal on metal, which means he'll come back. With more knives in the dark, the girls huddled together, whispering in their alien tongue. Their voices were high but steady, as if fear had become routine. Racks prowled the perimeter, nails scratching across concrete, ears twitching at phantom sounds. Elena knelt in front of the girls, voice softening. "We'll get you somewhere safe." I promised Talia, the eldest, always the one who dared to speak, lifted her chin. "Safe is nowhere, not while she lives." The word she hung in the air like a curse. No one needed to ask who it meant. Cole's stomach turned. He remembered battlefields scorched under emerald banners, voices screaming in Viridian dialect, the thunder of orbital bombardments. And above it all, the name whispered like a storm front, Empress Velora, the mother who had birthed these children, the tyrant who wanted them back. Elena stood abruptly. "We need to move." Cole didn't argue. He led them deeper into the pump station, where a ladder descended into blackness. The air grew colder, wetter, heavier with every rung. At the bottom lay another tunnel, narrower than the last, carved more by necessity than design. "This connects to the smuggler's routes," Elena explained, her voice echoing. "If we can reach the East Sprawl, we might buy passage off-world." "Big if," Cole muttered. They moved fast, but the tunnels twisted like intestines. Every corner whispered ambush. Every shadow breathed treachery. It was Rax who caught it first. The alien hound froze, nostrils flaring. His growl rumbled like distant thunder. Cole raised a fist. "Stop!" Too late. Figures peeled from the dark, half a dozen, maybe more. Their faces were hidden by rags, their weapons cobbled from salvage. The lead figure stepped forward, a woman with burn scars trailing down her neck like melted wax. "Travelers," she said, her voice both mocking and hungry. "Lost, are we?" Elena stiffened. Carrion Guild. Cole knew the name. Scavengers turned predators. They thrived where law collapsed, feeding on the desperate. "We don't want trouble," he said. The woman's eyes glinted. "Trouble's what you already brought, soldier." She tilted her chin at the girls. "Royal spawn, walking treasure chests, worth more than all your lives combined." The girls pressed into Cole's side. He felt their small fingers clutching his sleeve. "You'll have to kill me first," he said. The woman smiled with teeth like broken glass. "That was the plan." The tunnel exploded into chaos. Cole fired, the muzzle flash strobing against wet stone. Rax leapt, his jaws clamping around a man's throat. Elena yanked one of the girls back, just as a blade scraped sparks against the wall where her head had been. The air filled with shouts, gunfire, the metallic tang of blood. Cole slammed an attacker into the wall, felt the crunch of bone beneath his elbow. Another swung a pipe. Cole ducked, drove his knife upward. Warmth spilled across his hands. But there were too many. A hook caught his shoulder plate, dragging him off balance. A fist cracked against his jaw, stars exploding in his vision. Someone tried to wrench his rifle away. "Cole!" Elena screamed. He roared, a sound dragged from a place deeper than rage. He twisted, tore free, and fired point blank. The attacker collapsed in a heap. The survivors hesitated, not out of fear, but calculation. The scarred woman spat. "You fight like you want to die, but I don't kill for free." She flicked her fingers. "Withdraw." Just like that, the Carrion Guild melted back into the shadows, leaving their dead behind. Cole stood panting, chest heaving, every nerve alive with adrenaline. The girls clung to him. Elena touched his arm, blood streaking her cheek. "They'll be back," she whispered. "Let them," Cole said, though the weight in his voice betrayed exhaustion. Rax padded forward, muzzle red, eyes burning. Loyal, unyielding, unbreakable. They staggered deeper into the tunnels. The echoes of the skirmish faded, but the whispers of betrayal followed them like ghosts. At last, they emerged into the East Sprawl, a cavernous ruin where whole buildings had been swallowed by rockfall. Here, a black market bazaar festered in the rubble, lit by torches and phosphor lamps. The stench of oil and sweat was suffocating. Eyes tracked them instantly. Humans, aliens, hybrids, every gaze measured, weighed, dissected. Cole felt the noose tightening. The scarred man would spread his story. The Carrion Guild would scent unfinished business. And somewhere above, the Empress herself would be listening. He glanced at the girls, their fragile bodies swallowed in the crowd, their faces pale with exhaustion, but set with stubborn defiance. And he thought of the scarred man's words. "Her Majesty pays handsomely for ghosts." Cole Payne, soldier, deserter, ghost of the 7th. And now, protector of 3 lives the galaxy wanted caged or dead. Elena leaned close, her whisper brushing his ear. "We can't trust anyone here. Not even the ones who smile," he believed her. But as they pushed into the chaos of the sprawl, Cole also knew something else. This wasn't just a mission. It was a knife edge. One wrong move, and the children wouldn't be the only ones lost. The East Sprawl pulsed like a diseased heart. Smoke hung low, torches hissed, and voices tangled into a single, merciless drone. Traders hawked stolen tech. Hungry children clutched at sleeves. Spies pretended to be beggars, and beggars were often killers. Cole kept the girls close, one hand gripping his rifle, the other steadying the smallest by the shoulder. Rax prowled ahead, growling at anyone foolish enough to drift near. Elena walked tight against him, her hood shadowing her face. She whispered, "Half the eyes here are for us. The other half are for the price on those children." Cole grunted. "Feels like more than half." The bazaar twisted through ruins, collapsed skyscrapers fused into jagged canyons, bridges of welded scrap connecting one broken level to another. Banners of a dozen gangs fluttered overhead, their colors stitched from rags and blood. The girl's pale hair caught light like fire. No cloak could hide it. People stared, whispers rippling outward. Royal spawn. Viridian brats, bounty worth a city. Cole's jaw tightened. He felt the weight of his rifle like a heartbeat. Then a voice cut through the chaos. "Payne." Cole froze. The name struck like a hammer. He turned slowly. A man leaned against a stall stacked with rusted weapons. His armor was dented but familiar. Gray plates, insignia scratched off but still visible beneath grime. His grin was thin and cruel. "Didn't think I'd see the ghost of the 7th down here," the man said. "But hell, the galaxy's small when you're cursed." "Elroy," Cole muttered. The soldier chuckled. Thought you'd be rotting in a ditch. Instead, you're babysitting the Empress's spawn. What's the play here? Sell them yourself? Elena's hand went to her weapon. Cole shook his head, a warning. Not selling, Cole said. Then you're dumber than I remember. Elroy's grin widened. Their mother's face is stamped on every execution order this side of the rift. And you're walking her daughters into a pit of wolves. Cole stepped closer, voice low, lethal. Touch them, and I'll tear out your spine. Elroy laughed, but his eyes flicked, calculating, already weighing betrayal against profit. You always did believe in lost causes, Payne. Me? I believe in markets. He melted back into the crowd. Elena hissed. He's gonna sell us. I know. Cole's teeth clenched. We move. Now they pushed deeper into the sprawl, but every turn felt narrower, every alley hungrier. Cole saw men whispering, passing signals, knives flashing beneath cloaks. The air tasted of betrayal. Rack suddenly snarled, hackles high. Ahead, the crowd parted like meat before a blade. Armed figures stepped into view. Not scavengers, not guild scum. Soldiers. The Empress's crest burned green across their pauldrons. The guard. The girls gasped, clutching Cole's coat. Elena whispered, They've found us. The officer at their head raised a hand. By order of Her Imperial Majesty, the fugitives are claimed. Surrender the spawn, and your deaths will be merciful. Cole lifted his rifle. You'll have to carve me open first. The marketplace shivered. Traders scattered. Gang banners dropped. The sprawl knew what was coming. Blood. The guard advanced, weapons humming. Cole's finger tightened on the trigger. When suddenly, a blast rocked the entire bazaar. Shards of concrete rained down. Screams filled the air. Out of the smoke surged a new force. Not soldiers, not gangs, but civilians. An angry mob, armed with pipes, chains, broken glass, their faces burned with hunger and hatred. Take the children, someone screamed. They're worth food for a year. The sprawl had made its choice. Caught between Imperial Guard and ravenous mob, Cole and Elena stood with their backs to each other, the girls pressed between them. Rax growled, eyes blazing like fire. Cole's mind raced. No escape above, no mercy ahead, only teeth, the sprawl's teeth. The bazaar exploded into madness. The guards' rifles spat emerald light, lancing through the smoke. Mob fists hammered against armored chests. Screams rose like a storm. Cole fired into the chaos, not caring who dropped. His only thought was a wall of bodies between his girls and the teeth closing in. Left! Elena shouted. She swung her pistol, dropping a scavenger who lunged with the chain. Her hood tore back, sweat and soot streaking her face. Rax lunged at a guardsman, dragging him down, snarling with savage joy. The man's visor cracked beneath alien jaws. The girls pressed together, terror hollowing their faces. But they did not cry. They were their mother's daughters, and silence was survival. The mob howled, "Take them! The brats! The reward is ours!" Cole's fury burned white. "They're not spoils!" His voice tore across the market. "They're children!" No one listened. Hunger and greed drowned humanity. A pike slashed across his arm, blood blooming hot. He swung his rifle butt, cracking the attacker's teeth, spitting blood and laughter. Elena grabbed his sleeve. "We can't win this!" Cole snarled. "Then we carve a hole!" They pushed forward. Step, shoot, shove, step, swing, bleed. The bazaar's neon signs shattered overhead, raining sparks. Bodies pressed from every side. Suddenly, Elroy appeared. His grin was blood-slick, his pistol aimed at Cole's chest. "Mark it spoken, Payne." You can't fight a mob. Can't. Cole's rifle barked. Elroy spun, crashing into a stall of fruit crates. The mob roared in outrage, not grief, only fury at a lost bidder. Elena dragged the girls into an alley choked with smoke. Cole stumbled after, his shoulder torn, his breath fire. Rax limped, muzzle red, but his eyes still burning. The alley funneled into a stairwell, descending deeper, deeper into the bones of the sprawl. The air thickened with ash. Behind them, the mob's roar echoed like a beast. The guards' commands cracked like whips. Ahead, shadows moved. Not soldiers, not scavengers, refugees. Families huddled in the dark, eyes wide, gaunt faces lit by torchlight. Children stared at the Viridian girls, their whispers venom and fear. Which spawn? Cursed blood! Cole raised his rifle, but Elena caught his arm. They're not fighters, just broken people. One man stepped forward, his clothes ragged, his voice bitter. Give them to the guard, to the mob, to anyone but us. You'll bring slaughter down on our heads. Cole met his gaze. Slaughter's already here. A silence hung heavy. Then a child began to sob. The mob's roar grew closer. The guards' boots clattered like thunder. Cole clenched his teeth. He knew the truth. They couldn't outrun both. Move, he barked, shoving past the refugees. They recoiled, spitting curses, but none dared block him. They plunged deeper, tunnels twisting until the world narrowed to black stone and dripping pipes. The roar above dulled, swallowed by the earth. Finally, they collapsed in a chamber lit only by a dying lamp. The girls huddled, shivering. Rax lay down, panting hard. Elena pressed her back against the wall, eyes burning into coal. This is no escape. This is a grave. Cole wiped blood from his mouth, staring at the children. They say I'm cursed, he muttered. They say you're monsters. But I don't care what they say. The eldest girl tilted her head, voice small but steady. Why? Cole met her eyes. For a heartbeat, the battle noise above vanished. Because you're all I have left to fight for. The tunnels breathed like lungs, wet stone, dripping water, the stink of rust and mold. Every sound echoed, each drop a gunshot in the silence. Cole led the way, rifle raised, every nerve burning. Behind him, the girls shuffled, whispering only to one another. Elena kept pace at his side, her pistol low but steady, her eyes fixed on him with a question she never spoke aloud. You're bleeding too much, she finally said. I'll live. Not if you keep spilling like that. Cole glanced at her. Dirt streaked her cheeks, sweat matted her hair, but her gaze was fire. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't bred for war. Yet she hadn't faltered. You didn't have to come, he muttered. You didn't have to save them, she shot back, voice sharp. But here we are. They pressed on. The tunnel split into 3 paths, each one yawning like a mouth ready to swallow them. Which way? Elena asked. Before Cole could answer, a whisper came from the shadows. Left. They froze. The voice was smooth, mocking. Figures slid out of the dark, 5 of them cloaked in scavenger rags, blades glinting in the lamplight. But their eyes burned with something worse than hunger. Purpose. You're lost, the leader purred. His teeth gleamed. And you've got cargo no one refuses. He gestured at the girls. Cole raised his rifle. Back off. The man laughed softly. You don't get it, do you? There's no out. Not up there, not down here. Only trade. Satira dripped in his tone, words sharpened to cruelty. Peace treaty, war heroes, noble children. Labels don't matter. Down here, everything is meat or coin, Elena snarled. You're filth. Filth that eats, he replied, stepping closer. Cole squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked like thunder. The leader fell, skull blooming red. For a heartbeat, the chamber was silent. Then the others lunged. Steel flashed. Cole slammed one man into the wall, knife tearing through cloth and skin. Elena fired twice, dropping another before he touched her. Rax erupted with a howl, crushing a throat in his jaws. Blood sprayed across the tunnel walls. The last scavenger fled, screaming into the black. His echo lingered long after his footsteps vanished. The girls clung to each other, eyes wide, their silence heavy as stone. Cole wiped his blade on his sleeve. His breath rasped. "They'll bring more." "They always do," Elena whispered. They moved again, deeper. The tunnels twisted until time lost meaning. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs. The lamp sputtered low. Finally, they stumbled into a cavern, vast, lit by shafts of sickly green light from cracks in the ceiling. Pools of stagnant water mirrored the glow, and waiting there, like shadows given flesh, 3 figures, not scavengers, not refugees, royal guards. Their armor gleamed dark jade, blades curved like crescent moons. The tallest stepped forward, voice dripping contempt. "The Queen sends her regards, Captain Payne." "You've wandered long enough," Elena raised her pistol, but Cole's hand stopped her. His gut twisted cold. "Run," he told her, his voice steel. The guards drew their blades in unison, the sound ringing through the cavern like a death knell. The cavern echoed with steel as the 3 royal guards advanced, their jade armor glinting in the sickly green light. Each step was measured, merciless. Cole shifted his rifle, finger tight on the trigger. "Elena, take the girls. Stay behind me." She didn't move. Her jaw was clenched, pistol aimed. "I'm not leaving you to face them alone." The lead guard's voice was venomous silk. "You should have stayed in your cages, human." The Queen was merciful once. Now she only wants blood. "Yeah," Cole spat. "She and I finally agree on something." The guard lunged. Cole fired. The round slammed into jade chestplate. Sparks, but no kill. The guard spun, blade screeching across Cole's armor, hot pain ripping his side. Elena fired at the second guard, her shot catching his leg, staggering him. She rolled behind a rock pillar, dragging the youngest girl with her. Rax hurled himself at the third guard, fangs finding the joint of armor at the neck. The guard howled, smashing the beast against the wall, but Rax didn't let go. Cole switched to his knife as the first guard closed in. They clashed, steel on steel, the echo drowning the cavern. Every strike jarred his bones. He parried, barely, then drove his blade up under the guard's chin, finding soft flesh. Hot blood sprayed across his face. The body fell, one down. The second guard charged Elena. She fired again, empty clicks. She cursed, raising her arms to shield the girls. Cole didn't think. He hurled his knife. The blade spun true, burying in the guard's throat. He staggered, choking, then crumpled at Elena's feet. The third guard ripped Rax free and slammed him to the ground. The beast whimpered, blood matting his fur. Rage exploded in Cole's chest. He charged, tackling the guard with raw fury. They crashed into the stagnant pool, water erupting around them. The guard's blade carved into Cole's shoulder, white-hot agony. Cole's hands closed on the enemy's helmet, forcing it under the water. The guard thrashed, strength monstrous, but Cole didn't let go. Bubbles, thrashing, silence. Cole rose, drenched, shaking, vision blurred from blood and water. The cavern stank of copper and ozone. Elena knelt by Rax, hands trembling as she pressed the wound. "He's alive!" But barely. The girls were silent, eyes wide, tears finally breaking free. Cole staggered closer, pain burning every nerve. We move. Now Elena's eyes searched his. You can't even stand straight. He gritted his teeth. Standing's enough. They stumbled toward a tunnel at the cavern's far side. Cole half-dragged Rax, refusing to leave him. As they reached the darkness, a voice drifted through the cavern. Smooth, regal, cruel. Well done, Captain Payne. Few humans could best my guards. The Queen's voice. It seeped from hidden speakers in the stone, her presence everywhere, unseen. The girls froze, trembling. I could end you now, the Queen purred. Collapse the tunnels, drown you in stone, but where's the lesson in that? Cole snarled into the shadows. Come down here yourself, coward. Her laughter filled the cavern, cold and sharp. In time. For now, run, bleed, break. Every step only binds you tighter in my web. The lamp flickered, the voice faded. Elena whispered, She's hunting us. Cole clenched his fists, blood dripping into the water. His voice was a growl of defiance. Then let her hunt. We're not prey. They vanished into the dark, their shadows swallowed by the endless tunnels. The tunnels spat them out into a chamber vast enough to swallow a cathedral. Columns of carved stone rose into shadow, and the air shimmered with the heat of hidden engines. Cole's boots dragged, his wound searing fire. Elena kept her hand firm under his arm, half carrying him. Rax limped close, muzzle slick with blood, but eyes burning. And ahead, lights, voices. They stumbled into a subterranean square filled with ragged dwellings hammered from scrap metal and bone. The air reeked of sweat and old smoke. Dozens of faces turned, gaunt humans, scarred aliens, children with hollow eyes. An old man stepped forward, robes patched and filthy, but his gaze steady. Outsiders. From the surface? Elena raised her hands. We need shelter. The Queen's guards are hunting us. Please. A murmur spread through the crowd. Fear, curiosity, hunger. The old man studied Cole, bloodied but unbroken, and the three trembling, green-skinned girls clinging to his cloak. His lips curved into something not quite a smile. Follow me, he said. They were led through winding alleys of rust and shadow, deeper into the hidden colony. Fires burned in barrels. Children whispered from doorways. A woman offered water, her eyes darting nervously. The old man's dwelling was little more than a cavern with curtains of woven cables. He gestured them inside. You fought the Queen's Guard and lived, he said, voice sharp with awe and something colder. That makes you dangerous. That makes you valuable. Cole sank onto a crate, every muscle screaming. We're not here to be valuable. Just safe. One night, the old man chuckled. Safe. There is no safe. Only bargains, Elena stiffened. What kind of bargains? Before the old man could answer, a boy slipped inside, barely 16, sharp-eyed, clutching a rusted blade. They're heroes, Elder. Look at them. They could lead us. The old man's gaze hardened. Or doom us all. The room grew colder. Cole lifted his head, eyes narrowing. Something in the old man's smile was wrong, too measured, too sharp. Then came the sound. Boots, dozens of them, echoing down the alleys. Elena's hand flew to her pistol. You led them to us. The old man spread his arms as if welcoming applause. I survived because I serve. The Queen rewards loyalty, and she pays well for traitors. The curtains ripped open, guards pouring in, weapons gleaming. The girls screamed, huddling behind Cole. Rax bared his fangs, despite his wounds. Elena fired first, the shot tearing through a guard's visor. Chaos, steel, screams. Cole forced himself to his feet, ignoring the tearing agony. He pulled the girls behind him, shouting over the clash, "Stay low! Stay close!" A blade slashed across his arm. He slammed his fist into the guard's jaw, the impact crunching bone. Rax lunged at another, ripping into armor, blood spraying the cables like paint. Elena kicked over a barrel of fire, flames spilling, smoke choking the room. "Out the back!" she shouted. The old man just watched, smile never breaking, as if the slaughter was his entertainment. Cole locked eyes with him through the chaos. "If I live through this, you won't," the old man said calmly. Cole's rifle barked, and the old man's smile froze forever. Through fire and fury, they fought their way into the alleys, lungs burning, blades flashing in the dark. But as they burst into the open cavern, more guards were waiting. Rows of armored figures, blades reflecting the firelight. The queen's voice boomed through the cavern once more, cruel and triumphant. "Run farther, little soldier." Every step only tightens the noose. Cole raised his blade, Elena beside him, the girls clutching at his torn cloak. Surrounded, outnumbered, no way back, and yet he smiled. "Then let's see how tight it gets." The square blazed with fire and steel. The queen's guards formed an unbreakable wall, jade blades glowing with alien light. Cole stood at the front, his chest heaving, blood dripping down his side. Elena was beside him, pistol raised, defiance carved into her face. Behind them, three small girls clutched each other, wide-eyed and silent. The queen's voice rolled through the cavern like thunder. "Give them to me, soldier. Lay down your arms. Your death is meaningless, but their return will buy you mercy." Cole spat blood into the dirt. "You don't know me very well, do you?" The guards advanced, and then chaos. From the rooftops of rusted shacks, explosions tore through the air. Smoke and dust swallowed the front line of guards. Screams cut through the haze as jagged shrapnel ripped into alien armor. "Move!" a voice shouted. Figures dropped from above, humans, scarred and furious, armed with stolen rifles and blades. A resistance. Cole blinked through the smoke, disbelieving. Elena grabbed his arm. "They're fighting the guards. We have a chance." One of the fighters strode forward, helmet cracked, eyes like steel. He saluted Cole with a sharp jerk of the chin. "Captain Payne." "Name's Darius. Used to wear that jade armor myself. Before I learned the queen doesn't bleed for us, now I fight against her." He spun, firing his rifle into the smoke. A guard collapsed, shrieking. Cole's lips curled. "Then today, you're our best friend." The battlefield erupted. The resistance clashed with the queen's guard, smoke, flame, and screams painting the night. Cole dragged the girls toward cover, shielding them with his body as Darius and his fighters carved a path. Elena fired methodically, every shot finding a visor, a joint, a throat. Rax, wounded but unbroken, lunged once more, dragging a guard down in a storm of teeth and blood. But even with allies, the queen's forces pressed hard, disciplined and merciless. "Fall back!" Darius roared. "There's a tunnel under the furnace stacks." They ran, through fire, through corpses, through cries of both victory and death. The resistance fought like demons, buying seconds with their lives. As Cole reached the tunnel mouth, he looked back. The square was a slaughterhouse. Bodies burning, steel clashing, smoke blotting out the stars. And through it all, he heard her. The queen's voice, smooth and venomous. "Every rebellion ends in ash. Every traitor burns. Run, little soldier, run until your bones break. I will have them back." Her laughter followed them into the tunnel, cold and endless. They ran for what felt like hours. The girls' breaths were ragged, Elena's face pale, Rax limping but refusing to stop. Finally, they collapsed in a cavern lit only by faint fungus glow. Silence pressed heavy, broken only by distant echoes of battle fading away. Cole leaned against the wall, clutching his bleeding side, his vision blurred, but his voice was steady. Darius, why risk yourselves for us? The ex-guard met his eyes, expression like carved stone. Because the queen thinks loyalty is bought with fear. She's wrong. Fear breaks. And when it breaks, men like me stop obeying. He looked at the girls, then back at Cole. But don't mistake this. We didn't save you out of kindness. We need you. The people here need a symbol, someone who can fight, bleed, and still stand. Someone who spits in the queen's face. Cole almost laughed, bitter and weary. You want me to be your hero? I'm no hero. Darius shrugged. Neither am I. But the people don't need saints. They need fighters. The cavern fell silent again. The girls huddled together, finally drifting into an exhausted sleep. Elena's hand found Cole's, squeezing gently. Her voice was soft but steady. You may not see it, Cole. But to them, to these children, you already are. Cole looked at the sleeping girls. For the first time, a flicker of warmth broke through the exhaustion in his chest. But in the distance, deep in the stone, the queen's laughter still lingered. They had escaped, but only barely, and the hunt was far from over. The cavern resistance moved like ghosts in the dark. Under the fungus glow, men and women armed with scavenged rifles, broken blades, even sharpened pipes gathered around Darius's rough map carved into the stone floor. The target was simple, impossible. The queen's spire, her throne embedded in the heart of the underground city. Cole stood stiffly, leaning on his rifle like a crutch. His side throbbed, his blood loss worsening, but he forced himself to remain steady. Elena hovered near, her hand brushing his arm, silent worry in her eyes. Darius tapped the map. The spire's outer gates are jade-locked, but I know their rhythm. At the midnight shift, the locks reset for 3 minutes. That's our window. Once inside, we split. Half create chaos, half move for the throne chamber. His gaze flicked to the girls, curled in sleep against Rax's thick fur. The queen will never stop hunting them. Either she dies or they never live free. Cole's voice was gravel. Then we kill her. Whatever it takes, whispers rippled through the resistance. Some faces gleamed with hope, others with terror. One man spat. Easy for you to say, surface soldier. You're already half dead. The rest of us will be Ash. Darius slammed his fist into the wall. Better ash than chains. The man sneered but fell silent. Elena's eyes swept the room, hard and certain. You all wanted a symbol. Well, here he is. Cole's bled more in 2 days than you've bled in years. Follow him or crawl back to your holes. But if you crawl, know this. The queen will burn you anyway. The silence broke into murmurs, then into grim agreement. The plan was set. The march. They moved through tunnels like shadows, guided by Darius. Cole carried one of the younger girls, the other two clinging to Elena. Rax padded beside them, each step heavy but loyal. The spire rose before them at last, an obsidian tower carved into the cavern's ceiling, pulsing with alien light. Its walls shimmered with jade circuits, alive with the queen's power. Guards patrolled the bridges and gates, their armor gleaming. Darius signaled. The resistance scattered, taking positions. For one breath, the world was silent. Then hell opened, gunfire, explosions, screams. The resistance poured from the shadows, overwhelming the first patrol. Jade armor cracked under sheer fury. Smoke swallowed the bridge. Cole ran with the strike team. Every step agony, every breath fire. Elena was at his side, eyes blazing. Darius cut down 2 guards with brutal precision, his stolen rifle roaring. They reached the gate as the lock cycled, the jade glow dimming. Darius slammed a charge into the mechanism. It blew, shards of stone raining down, and the gates screamed open. The throne corridor stretched ahead, lined with statues of alien queens past, their faces cold and merciless. And then, the betrayal. The man who had sneered earlier raised his rifle, not at a guard, but at Cole. The shot rang. Cole staggered, pain exploding in his shoulder. The man's grin was madness. She promised me freedom, promised me a place at her side. Before he could fire again, Elena put a bullet between his eyes. His body collapsed, lifeless, still smiling. Cole grit his teeth, forcing himself upright, voice hoarse. Keep moving. Don't stop. They stormed the corridor. Guards poured in from both sides. Darius's fighters clashed, steel with steel, the air a storm of blood and screams. Cole pushed forward, dragging himself, the girls behind him. Elena covered his flank, ruthless, efficient. And then, at the end of the hall, doors taller than towers, carved from obsidian, pulsing with green fire. The throne chamber, it swung open. And she stepped out, the queen herself. Her form was tall, regal, cloaked in living jade armor that shifted like liquid. Her skin glowed pale, her eyes pits of emerald fire. Her voice rolled like thunder, venom and silk entwined. You've come so far, little soldier. Just to kneel at my feet. The guards fell silent, as if the battle itself had paused to witness her. Cole's grip tightened on his rifle, blood dripping from his fingers. He spat onto the floor, glaring at her through the haze of pain and fire. I didn't come this far to kneel. The throne chamber burned with green fire. Statues cracked and bled jade light as the queen advanced, her emerald eyes blazing with centuries of fury. Her voice filled the cavern, cruel and triumphant. You thought you could take my daughters from me? They are my blood, my legacy, mine. The princesses shrank behind Cole, their small hands gripping his armor. He planted himself between them and the queen, every nerve screaming in pain, but his stance unbroken. Your daughters aren't property, Cole growled. They're children. And they deserve a life you'll never give them. The queen's smile was cold. Then you will die their false hero. She raised her hand. A spear of jade energy screamed toward Cole, only for Rax to leap, intercepting it. The alien hound yelped as the blast tore through his side, but he held his ground long enough for Cole and the girls to dive aside. Rax! Lena cried. The beast gave a low growl, eyes softening before collapsing. Fury surged through Cole. He rose, rifle braced. He fired again and again, bolts tearing into the queen's guards. Darius roared beside him, swinging a broken blade like a storm, carving a path through armored foes. Elena fought at Cole's back, each shot precise, her jaw set in grim determination. Still, the queen was untouchable, her armor drinking in their weapons' fire, her movements fluid as smoke. She lashed out, jade whips cracking, throwing resistance fighters like rag dolls. One whip caught Darius, hurling him against a statue. He did not rise. The chamber fell silent for a heartbeat. Cole knew it was down to him. He turned to Elena, eyes heavy with meaning. Get them out. She shook her head violently. No, not without you, Elena. His voice softened, cutting through the chaos. You're the only one I trust. Keep them alive. That's the mission. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she nodded. She took the girl's hands, pulling them toward the shattered doors. The queen's laughter followed. "Run, little mice!" Run while your soldier dies screaming. Cole dropped his empty rifle. He drew his combat knife, the same blade that had followed him through a dozen wars. The steel felt almost weightless now. Yushinde, data kopuruşlarda katnaşdım, kop konkordim. Ammo mening enkata galabam sizlarni tirik koldirishim boladi. And then he charged. The queen met him with a snarl, jade spears slicing the air. Cole dodged one, parried another, each move born not of strength, but of sheer will. He closed the distance, knife flashing. He drove it deep into the queen's side. Her scream shattered stone. Emerald fire exploded outward, engulfing them both. Cole held on, forcing the blade deeper, their bodies locked in a storm of green light. "Elena!" he shouted, voice breaking. "Go!" The last thing the girls saw was his silhouette, wrapped in fire, defying a queen. The explosion tore through the chamber. Aftermath. Silence fell. Dust drifted through the ruined spire. Elena stumbled into the tunnels, dragging the princesses with her. Behind them, the chamber collapsed, burying the queen, her guards, and Cole beneath tons of stone and emerald flame. The resistance fighters who survived stood in awe, watching the spires glow, gutter, and die. The queen's reign ended in smoke and rubble. Days later, the cavern city breathed free air for the first time in generations. Chains were broken. The people, once cowed, rose. Atop the ruins, Elena stood with the girls. The eldest, Talia, clutched Cole's knife, rescued from the wreckage, the blade scorched but whole. She held it to her chest, whispering, "We'll remember him." Elena's voice trembled but carried strength. "Not just remember. We live because of him. That's how he wins." The cavern echoed with quiet hope. For the first time, dawn felt real.